Hello guys, in this lecture we will be discussing about physiology of pain. So physiology of pain is an important essay question which is frequently asked in paper 2 of physiology, and this topic called the physiology of pain is an easy topic. So if you just understand the concept and facts present in this lecture, you can easily score the maximum marks if this question is asked in the examination, and also this becomes the most easiest of all the essay questions as far as CNS is concerned. So with this note, let's start today's lecture on physiology of pain. So in this lecture, we will be discussing about the definition of pain, the receptors of pain, the stimulus for pain receptors, types of pain, pathways of pain, modulation of pain perception, theories of pain, referred pain and radiating pain, and finally few applied physiology. So pain as a whole is very important. So before moving on to the actual lecture, you must get answers for these three questions. What is pain? Why is the knowledge of pain important for a physician? And is pain good or bad? So moving on to the first question, what is pain? So pain is nothing but it is an unpleasant sensation, right? So pain is nothing but an unpleasant sensation. Okay, so keeping this aside, moving on to the second question, why is the knowledge of pain essential for a doctor? So you must all know that pain is the most important symptom which brings the patient to a doctor. So if if any disease condition is not presenting with pain, the patient may or may not be aware of something wrong is going in his body, and he may not attend a doctor. So you must understand that pain is the most important symptom which brings the patient to a doctor. Different disease conditions produce different types of pain, which you will be learning in your higher classes when you attend your clinical postings. So the first class which they will be taking if you are attending a medicine or a surgery posting is only about pain. So that much important pain has in diagnosing a disease. Okay, so moving on to the third question, is pain good or bad? So pain is actually considered as a protective mechanism because pain warns the subject that something evil or wrong is happening in his body. And it also helps in withdrawal of the part of body away from the uh, source of pain. So these 2 points prove that pain is a good protective mechanism. So with this basic knowledge, let's start today's lecture on the physiology of pain. So moving on to the first topic, the definition of pain. So pain, as known by many, is defined as an unpleasant and emotional feeling of the subject associated with or without tissue injury. So pain is nothing but it is an unpleasant and emotional feeling of the subject associated with or without tissue injury. So this is a normal definition which is defined by all. But Sherrington, a scientist, defined pain in a different way. So Sherrington defined pain as a psychical adjunct of an imperative protective reflex. So every examiner who is correcting a paper will expect Sherrington's definition of pain. So how did Sherrington define pain? Sherrington defined pain as a psychical adjunct of an imperative protective reflex. So moving on to the next. So in this whole lecture, we will be discussing only these 4 subheadings, that is the transduction, transmission, perception and modulation. So the entire lecture will be based on these 4 topics. Okay, so those are transduction, transmission, perception and modulation. So moving on to the first slide called transduction. So transduction is nothing but the conversion of the stimuli, that is the pain stimuli, into electrical energy is called transduction. Okay, so if you give a stimuli, pain stimuli, the pain stimulus is converted into electrical energy in the nociceptors. Nociceptors is the receptors for pain. So in the nociceptors, the pain stimuli is converted into an electrical energy. So this process is called transduction. So moving on to our next discussion based on the nociceptors. So nociceptors are nothing but the pain receptors, they are pain receptors. Okay, so nociceptors are cutaneous sensory receptors and which are free or naked nerve endings. So mostly all the sensory receptors are specialized, but these pain receptors and nociceptors are free nerve endings. They're not specialized. They're not specialized nerve endings. Okay, so it is cutaneous sensory receptors having free nerve endings. These are widespread in the superficial layers of skin, and some other internal organs like arterial walls, periosteum, and joint surfaces, etc. So in the deeper tissue, they are sparsely located. So the points you must infer for from this slide is nociceptors are nothing but they are pain receptors. They are cutaneous sensory receptors which are free nerve endings. So these are widespread in the superficial layers of skin and only some of the internal organs like arterial walls, etc. And these are sparsely located on the deeper tissues. So there are three types of nociceptors. So they are mechanical nociceptors, thermal nociceptors, and chemical nociceptors. So mechanical nociceptor sends strong pressure waves. Okay, so this is regarding your mechanical nociceptors. And next, going to the thermal nociceptors, they sense changes in the temperature like greater than 42 degrees Celsius or lesser than 5 degrees Celsius. So this 42 degrees Celsius is an important numerical because so the temperature above 42 degrees Celsius is the temperature when the tissue damage takes place starts to take place. Okay, so when you increase the temperature greater than 42 degrees Celsius, it is then only the tissue starts to get damaged. So this point is important regarding the thermal nociceptor is concerned. So next, moving on to the chemical nociceptor. So these sense the changes in chemicals like bradykinin, histamine, serotonin, acids, acetylcholine, potassium, proteolytic enzymes, etc. So that's another type of receptor called the polymodal receptors. Polymodal receptors. So polymodal receptors are the combination of all these three types of receptors. So they can sense changes in all these three, the mechanical, thermal, or chemical stimuli. So they are called as polymodal. So totally there are four, out of which three are very important. That is the mechanical, thermal, and chemical nociceptors, and the last one is called polymodal, which is a combination of all these three receptors. So moving on to our next slide, the stimulus for pain receptors. So we already know that there are three receptors, right? So they'll be having the corresponding three stimuli. So mechanical stimulus for the mechanical nociceptors, the thermal stimulus for the thermal nociceptors, and the chemical stimulus for the um, chemical nociceptors. So yes, summarizing the stimulus, mechanical stimulus is by strong pressure waves, and thermal stimulus is by temperature changes greater than 45 degrees Celsius or temperature lesser than 5 degrees Celsius. And chemical stimulus include bradykinin, histamine, serotonin, acids, acetylcholine, proteolytic enzymes, potassium ions. So out of this, bradykinin is the most important chemical stimulus, which is known. So this bradykinin is the most important chemical stimuli which causes is the most important chemical which causes uh, chemical stimulation. So bradykinin is the most important, and there are also some substances in some chemicals in our body which enhance the sensitivity of the sensitivity of the nociceptor. So these are substance P and prostaglandin. So this can be asked as an MCQ in your exam as well as an entrance. So substances like substance P and prostaglandins, they enhance only the sensitivity of receptor. So they won't be directly exciting the nerve endings. So they only increase the sensitivity of the nociceptors. So yes, next moving on to the types of pain. So pain is broadly classified into somatic pain and visceral pain. And this somatic pain in turn is classified as fast pain and slow pain. So in this lecture, we'll be concentrating more on fast pain and slow pain because these two are very important. So summarizing the types of pain, pain is broadly classified as somatic pain and visceral pain, out of which the somatic pain is in turn classified as fast pain and slow pain. So moving on to what is fast pain. So fast pain is also called by other names which are acute pain, physiological pain, sharp pain, pricking pain, and electrical pain. So the fast pain is the first pain to arise. That is, it arises within 0.1 second of of um, of the pain impulse. Okay, so if you give a pain impulse, this arises within 0.1 seconds, and this fast pain is mostly superficial. Okay, these are the important points regarding fast pain. Also, you can add upon some other points like this is a well localized pain. So fast pain is a well localized pain, and fast pain is carried by A delta fibers. So fast pain is carried by A delta fibers and it is a well localized pain. So summarizing what is fast pain, it is also called by other names like acute pain, physiological pain, sharp pain, pricking type of pain, electrical pain, etc. And this pain arises within zero point 0.1 second and it vanishes fast. So it arises quickly and it's short acting. Okay, and this fast pain is mostly superficial, carried by, and it is absent in deeper tissues. Okay, so it is carried by A delta fibers and it is a localized pain. So moving our discussion into slow pain. So slow pain is also called by a few other names, which are chronic pain, pathological pain, aching pain, throbbing pain, nauseous pain, etc. So this pain arises only after 1 second on application of the pain impulse and gradually increases up to few minutes. Okay, so this pain is slow in origin, but it is longer acting. So this is the point you must. This is the point of difference between the slow pain and fast pain, which you must. Okay, and these are carried by C fibers and they are poorly localized pain. So these 2 points can be added up for slow pain. They carried by C fibers and they are poorly localized pain. Okay, so these are the points regarding the difference between the fast pain and slow pain. So next, moving on to some a topic called varieties of pain. So this is not important as far as the examination point of view is concerned. For completion's sake, I have added the varieties of pain. There are other varieties of pain called acute pain, chronic pain, cutaneous pain, deep somatic pain, visceral pain, referred pain, neuropathic pain, and phantom pain. So out of these, some pains we will be dealing towards the end of this lecture. Other pains will be discussed in your future classes. Okay, so an important no, no this slide is a very important slide which is absent in other sensory receptors. That is the nature of pain receptors. Pain receptors are non-adaptive in nature, which is absent in all other sensory receptors. So pain receptors are non-adaptive. So this point is very important. You must be uh, knowing the non-adaptive nature of pain. So pain receptor does not adapt. So this feature is because it allows the pain to keep the person aware of a tissue damage process as long as it stays. So only if there is pain, the patient will be aware that something wrong is happening in the body, and he will take steps to eliminate the pain. Right. So this proves the non-adaptive nature of pain. So pain does not get adapted because only if there is pain persisting, the patient will know that something wrong is happening in his body and he will take steps to eliminate the pain. Okay, so you must now know some facts that pain differs from other sensations in a large way. So pain and other sensations are not different. Eh, so these so pain and other sensations are broadly distinguished by some factors because pain is all mostly is associated with emotion, withdrawal response, or autonomic changes like increase in heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and initiation of behavioral pattern like aggression and defense activity, which is absent in other sensations. So pain differs from other sensation in so pain differs from other sensations in having association with emotion, withdrawal response, autonomic changes like heart rate, blood pressure, and initiation of behavioral pattern like aggression and defense activity. So um, these four factors show that pain is totally different sensation when compared to other normal sensation. So next, moving on to few causes of pain. Okay, now we'll be discussing about few causes of pain. So broadly, any tissue damage can cause pain. Okay, so broadly, any tissue damage can cause pain. So if there is tissue damage, we all know that there will be active uh, chemical changes happening at the site of tissue damage, right? So when there is tissue damage, there will be secretion of histamine, bradykinin, prostaglandin, serotonin, etc. So these chemicals, out of these chemicals, bradykinin is the most important chemical which goes and stimulates the chemical nociceptors, which initiates a pain reflex. Okay, pain stimulus. So whenever there is tissue damage, we know that some chemicals are secreted at the site of tissue damage, like serotonin, histamine, bradykinin, etc. So these out of this, the most important one is bradykinin, which goes and stimulates the chemical nociceptors and starts a pain stimulus. So next other few causes are ischemia and spasm. So when there is ischemia, that is a lack of blood flow to a tissue, necrosis follows. So when there is necrosis, when there is ischemia, the tissue is deprived of oxygen. Hence there will be formation of lactic acid due to anaerobic metabolism, and also secretion of the bradykinin, proteolytic enzymes, etc. So this bradykinin association with the lactic acid goes and stimulates the chemical nociceptors and cause pain. So moving on to the another cause called the spasm. So spasm, we all know that spasm is a contraction, continuous muscle contraction, right? So spasm can initiate pain reflex by two mechanisms: a direct mechanism and indirect mechanism. Direct mechanism is by direct activation of mechanoreceptors. So we can imagine spasm to be like a pressure wave, right? So this pressure wave directly stimulates the mechanoreceptors and can initiate pain, or else this spasm, spasm of any muscle can contract the underlying blood vessel, and can also cause pain through ischemia. Okay, so direct mechanism is through acting over directly on mechanoreceptors, and indirectly by creating ischemia of the neighboring tissues. So these three causes are very important. Uh, so these three are the very important causes of pain. Okay. So next we'll be discussing about transmission of pain. So transmission of pain is by two fibers. We saw that fast pain is carried by A delta fibers. So A delta fibers are myelinated fibers, and slow pain is carried by C fibers. So C fibers are unmyelinated fibers. Okay, and the pain from the spinal cord, pain stimuli from the spinal cord is carried to the higher centers through the spinothalamic tract, or also called as anterolateral tract. Okay, so fast pain is carried by A delta fibers, which are unmyelinated, and slow pain is carried by C fibers that are fast pain is carried by A delta fibers, which are myelinated, and C fibers are carried by and slow pain is carried by C fibers, which are unmyelinated fibers. So from the spinal cord, the pain signals are transmitted to the higher centers through the spinothalamic tract, also called as anterolateral tract. Okay. So next, moving on to pathways of pain. So you all will be knowing that pain is also called as pain is also referred to as dual sensation of pain. So the reason behind this dual sensation of pain is, so whenever there is a pain stimuli acting on your body, there will two types of pain arises, that is slow pain and fast pain. The first fast pain arises just immediately after the initiation of pain impulse. Okay, so pain stimuli, so immediately after you give the pain stimulus, the fast pain arises. After this, slowly gradually the C pain arises, which persists for a long time. So this two pain gives the dual sensation of pain. This is why we tend to have dual sensation of pain um, when we are subjected to a uh, pain sensation or pain stimulus. Okay, so the fast pain from the spinal cord is carried through the neospinothalamic tract, and slow pain through the paliospinothalamic tract. So there are two types of spinothalamic tract: the neospinothalamic tract and the paliospinothalamic tract. Fast pain is carried by the neospinothalamic tract, and the slow pain is carried by the paliospinothalamic tract. Okay. So now we'll be discussing about each thing in detail. So not only for pain sensation, when for all these sensation, you must be describing the pathway or the neuronal connection in three segments. That is the first order neurons, the second order neurons, and the third order neurons. Okay, first order neurons, second order neurons, and the third order neurons. So not only for pain sensation, for all the sensations of the body, you must be describing the pathway or the neuronal connections in as three segments: the first order neurons, the second order neurons, and the third order neurons. So we'll be discussing them in the further slides. So moving on to the fast pain pathway. So whenever there is a pain impulse striking your skin, consider skin. Okay, so as soon as the nociceptors sense the pain impulse, the fast pain starts first, right? So this So there is transduction processing takes place in the nociceptors. So from this, electrical energy passes through the A delta fibers from the nociceptors and reaches the spinal dorsal root of spinal cord. So we know that fast pain arises as is transported to the A delta fibers from the nociceptors to the dorsal root of spinal cord. So this terminates in first lamina of spinal cord. There are 9 laminas in the spinal cord. Okay, you must know that there are 9 laminas where this fast pain pathway called the A delta fibers terminate in lamina 1. It terminates in lamina 1 called the lamina marginalis. So this is the first order neurons. So first order neurons is that they originate from the nociceptors and terminate in the lamina marginalis. So these are the first order neurons regarding the fast pain pathway. So from here, the second order neurons begin. So from the lamina 1 or the lamina marginalis of the dorsal root, the second order neurons begin. So from here, this fast pain pathway crosses to the opposite side through the anterior. So this, we know this is the anterior commissure of spinal cord, right? So this fast pain fibers, second order fast pain fibers originating from the lamina marginalis crosses to the opposite side of the spinal cord to the anterior commissure and then turns upwards to project into the anterolateral pathway or the neospinothalamic tract. So fast pathway is through the neospinothalamic tract. So this is important regarding second order neurons. So second order neurons originating from the lamina marginalis, it crosses to the opposite side of the spinal cord through the anterior commissure and projects into the neospinothalamic tract. So this second order neurons, after originating from the lamina marginalis, gets and projects. So few fibers of this fast pathway terminate in the reticular formation of the brainstem. Few fibers terminate in the reticular formation of the brainstem, while most of the fibers terminate in the ventrobasal complex and the posterior nuclear group of thalamus. So this is the point to be noted. So second order neurons originating from the lamina marginalis in the dorsal root cross to the opposite side of the spinal cord to the anterior commissure and project into the neospinothalamic tract. So out of these fibers entering the neospinothalamic tract, few fibers terminate in the reticular formation areas in the brainstem, and majority of the fibers are terminated in the ventrobasal complex and posterior nuclear group of thalamus. Okay, so from here the third order neurons begin. So from here third order neurons begin, and these neurons are terminated into the somatosensory cortex or the higher centers. Okay, so consider somatosensory cortex to be here. So from the ventrobasal complex and the posterior group of nuclei, third order neurons arises and they are projected into the somatosensory cortex or the higher centers. Okay, so this three order neurons are important regarding the transmission of fast pain. So consider, so this is the nociceptor, and through the A delta fibers, the pain arises and terminates in the lamina marginalis of the spinal cord. So from the lamina marginalis of the spinal cord, the second order neurons arises and it crosses to the opposite side of the spinal cord to the anterior commissure and projects into the neospinothalamic tract, and few fibers terminate into the reticular formation, and the most of the fibers terminate in the thalamus. Okay, that is the ventrobasal and the posterior nuclear group. Okay, so few fibers terminate in the reticular formation, and most of them travel upwards to terminate in the thalamus, ventrobasal and posterior nuclear group. And from here the third order neurons arises and terminates into the somatosensory cortex. So these are the three order. This is the first order neuron, second order neurons, and this is the third order neuron. So this is regarding the pathway for the fast pain. Okay, so summarizing the fast pain pathway, the fast pain arising from the nociceptors are carried to the myelinated A delta fibers, and it projects into the lamina margin. So this is the lamina marginalis. So from the lamina marginalis, the second order neurons arises, and it crosses to the opposite side of the spinal cord to the anterior commissure present, and it is projected into the neospinothalamic tract. And out of the fibers entering the neospinothalamic tract, few fibers are terminated into the reticular formation of the brainstem, and most of the fibers are terminated in the ventrobasal and the posterior nuclear group in the of the thalamus. So from the thalamus, the third order neurons arises, which terminate in the somatosensory cortex, that is the postcentral area. This area 312 in the somatosensory, that is in the cortex. Okay. So this is regarding the fast pain pathway. So now, this is also a flow chart. So as far as physiology is concerned, mostly concentrate only on the flow charts and pictures. Okay, so there is no need of writing pages of theory. So only if you draw the flow chart and explain with a diagram, you will be getting the maximum mark. So the pain stimuli coming from the pain receptors are carried through the A delta fibers, and terminates the lamina marginalis in the dorsal root of spinal cord. So from here, the second order neuron arises, and it cross and projects into the neospinothalamic tract, and few fibers terminate in the reticular formation, and most of them terminate in the ventrobasal complex and posterior nuclear group of thalamus. Okay, so from here, third order neuron arises, which are projected into the somatosensory cortex and other basal areas of the brain. So make sure that you are clear with the fast pain pathway. So now moving to the slow pain pathway. So similarly, after the fast pain pathway started, so next after a second, the slow pain pathway starts to originate. So slow pain, we consider this to be a nociceptor. So from here, the slow pain pathway originates. So slow pain, after originating, are carried to the spinal cord through the C fibers. C fibers are the unmyelinated fibers. So from the nociceptor, these are terminated into the lamina 2 and 3, which are together called the substantia gelatinosa. So one is called lamina marginalis, and 2 and 3 is called the substantia gelatinosa. So this slow pain pathway, after originating from the nociceptor, they terminate in the lamina 2 and lamina 3 of the dorsal root of spinal cord. So this area is called the substantia gelatinosa. So from here, some few interneuron connection or short neuron connection arises. So these short neuron connections originate from the area 2 and 3 and terminate in lamina 5. So these short interneuronal connections arising from the lamina 2 and lamina 3 terminate in the lamina 5 of dorsal root. Terminate in the lamina 5 of the dorsal root of spinal cord. So these interneuronal connections are present only for slow pain pathway. So from here, from the lamina 5, the second order neuron arises. So these second order neurons, similarly to that of fast pain pathway, cross to the opposite side and enter to the through the anterior commissure and enter the anterolateral pathway or the paleospinothalamic tract. So fast pain is by the neospinothalamic tract, and slow pain is by the paleospinothalamic tract. Okay, clear with this? So these slow pain pathway, which is now moving in the paleospinothalamic tract, out of these second order neurons, most of the fibers terminate in the brainstem areas. Brainstem, that is the reticular formation area, and periaqueductal gray matter and tectal areas. So, and only few fibers are taken into the higher centers. So it is exactly opposite for both. When you take the fast pain pathway, only few fibers terminate in the brainstem, and most of them are terminated in the thalamus, that is the higher center. But when you compare it with the slow pain pathway, in slow pain, most of the fibers terminate in the brainstem, and only few terminate in the higher centers. Okay, so moving on to moving back to a discussion on second order neurons of the slow pain pathway. So most of them terminate in the brainstem areas, which includes the reticular formation, tectal areas, and periaqueductal gray matter. Okay, so from here the third order neurons arises, and they terminate in the intralaminar and the intralaminar nucleus of the thalamus. Okay, so third order neurons from the brain stem, they terminate in the intralaminar nuclei of thalamus. So this is important regarding the slow pain pathway. So moving on to the discussion of the slow pain pathway. So consider this to be a nociceptor. So there is a pain stimulus and transduction process takes place, and the slow pain stimulus arises through the C fibers, unmyelinated C fibers, and they terminate in the area 2 and area 3 called the substantia gelatinosa in the dorsal root of spinal cord. So these terminate in the area 2 and area 3. So from here they have short interneuronal connections up to the lamina 5. So this small internal connection is present only for the slow pain pathway. Okay, so from the lamina 2 and lamina 3, it is called the substantia gelatinosa, small interneuronal connections arises, and this terminates in the lamina 5. So consider this to be the lamina 5, terminates in the lamina 5. So from the lamina 5, second order neurons arises. So these second order neurons, similar to that of the fast pain pathway, cross through the opposite side of the spinal cord through the anterior commissure and enter the paleospinothalamic tract. So out of the fibers entering the paleospinothalamic tract, most of the fibers are projected into the brainstem areas, mostly the reticular formation and periaqueductal gray matters and the tectal areas. Okay, and only few fibers are projected into the higher areas, and from here the third order neurons arises, and they're projected into the intralaminar and the midline nucleus. So this is the third order neurons, intralaminar and few areas of the cortex. So these are regarding the 3 order neurons of the slow pain pathway. So this is the connection of slow pain pathway, that is fibers originating from the nociceptors are carried through the myelinated C fibers till the lamina 2 and the lamina 3 of the dorsal root of the spinal cord, and from here, from lamina 5, the second order neuron arises, and it crosses to the opposite side through the anterior commissure, and then terminates in the reticular formation, periaqueductal gray matter, and tectum, which is present in the brain stem, and only few terminate in the higher center. So from the intralaminar nucleus and midline nucleus, the third order neurons arises, and they project into the cortex. So I hope all are clear with the slow pain and fast pain pathway, because this is going to be the most important topics regarding this whole lecture. Okay, and you must also know, so we have already discussed that fast pain is a well localized pain and slow pain is a poorly localized pain. So I'm going to tell you a few facts which proves this statement. So we already know that fast pain is a well localized pain, and a slow pain is poorly localized pain. Okay, so when you take the example of fast pain, so fast pain is well localized pain. That is, if you get a pain sensation near a thumb, so if it's a fast pain, then clearly point it to a thumb. So in case of slow pain, if there is the actual pain sensation in your thumb, so you can only approximately say that your upper limb is painful, and you cannot point exactly to the pain stimuli. Okay, so this is the difference regarding the localization of pain. So fast pain is well localized and the slow pain is poorly localized. It is because we already saw that slow pain fibers have diffused connections along with multisynaptic. So we already know slow pain has some multisynaptic connections or diffuse connections. So this is the reason why slow pain is poorly localized, but fast pain fibers do not have such multisynaptic connections, and there is only a single connection for the fast pain pathway. So hence we can say that fast pain is the well localized pain, but slow pain is poorly localized because of multisynaptic connection as well as the diffused multisynaptic and diffuse connectivity of the slow pain pathway. So fast pain is mostly well localized only when it's associated with the tactile sensation. Tactile means touch. So fast pain can be well localized, precisely localized when it is stimulated along with the tactile sensation. Tactile sensation, for completing sake, I'm saying tactile sensation is carried by the dorsal column. So tactile sensation will be carried by dorsal column. The pain is carried by the anterolateral column, but the dorsal tactile sensation will be carried by dorsal column. So when both of these are stimulated together, then you can well localize pain. Okay, understand this. So you can be so pain localization can be very precise if the pain fibers are associated with the, that is the fast pain fibers are stimulated along with the tactile sensation. Okay, so this point you must be clear with. So next, summarizing the palliopharmacologic tract, that is from the nociceptors, the pain sensation is carried through the C fibers, and it terminates the lamina 2 and lamina 3, which is also called the substantia gelatinosa. So from the lamina 5, the second order neurons arises through the palliopharmacologic tract, and it projects into the, most of them project into the reticular formation, tectal areas, and periaqueductal gray region of the brainstem, and only few project into the higher centers like thalamus. So from here, the third order neurons arises, that is from the intralaminar and from intralaminar nucleus from of thalamus. Third order neurons arises, and they project into the other base areas of the brain and the cortex. Okay, so this is important regarding the fast pain and slow pain is concerned. Okay. So next, moving on to the center of pain sensation. So as per the centers, there are two centers, that is the higher center and the lower center. The higher center is nothing but the somatosensory cortex. Okay, that is postcentral gyrus area 3 to 1 in the cortex. So that is the higher center. Lower centers include the brainstem, that is the tectal area, periaqueductal gray matter, and the reticular formation area. So there are two centers primarily. That is the higher center, which is called the somatosensory cortex, and the lower center called the lower centers, that is the reticular formation, tectal areas, and the periaqueductal gray matter. Okay, so this is regarding the centers for pain sensation. So you must clearly understand here that a fact that there is a neurotransmitter for both. So as far as the fast pain pathway is concerned, the A delta fibers had when they're ending in the lamina 1 or the lamina marginalis, they keep secreting glutamate. So glutamate is considered as the neurotransmitter of fast pain, and substance P is considered as the neurotransmitter of slow pain. Okay, so you must the crisp point you must understand here is glutamate is the neurotransmitter of fast pain, and substance P is the neurotransmitter involved in slow pain. So glutamate for fast pain and substance P is for slow pain. And we were discussing about the centers of pain sensation, right? So the higher sensations are involved. So the higher sensations are involved in interpreting the pain quality, while the lower areas are important for the pain perception. So higher fibers interpret the pain quality, and the lower centers interpret the pain perception. So this point you must know, because most of the fibers, be it the slow pain or fast pain, terminate in the brainstem. So even if you take off the somatosensory area away from, if you amputate the somatosensory area, somatosensory cortex away from the human brain also, there will be pain perception happening. So this is because of the lower areas or the brainstem. So lower areas take active participation in continuous pain perception, whereas the somatosensory cortex takes active participation in interpreting the quality of pain. So this is important regarding the center of our pain. So next, moving on to the pain perception. So pain perception is the person is aware of pain because of the somatosensory cortex identifies and localizes the intensity of pain, and the person unfolds a complex reaction, physiological and behavioral responses. The perception is nothing but the person is aware of pain. So this is due to the somatosensory cortex and the brainstem areas. This is regarding the perception of pain. So next, moving on to the modulation of pain. So modulation of pain is nothing but inhibiting the pain. So modulation is nothing but inhibiting the pain. So inhibiting neurotransmitters like opioids work to modulate the pain. So this inhibition of pain impulse is called as modulation of pain. So this pain modulation is by as I already said in the last slide, the fast pain the neurotransmitter is glutamate, and for the slow pain the neurotransmitter is substance P. So modulation takes place at two levels, at the peripheral nerve endings levels and at the spinal cord level or the higher level. Okay, so modulation takes place at two levels, the peripheral nerve ending, that is at the A delta and C fiber level, and also at the spinal cord level and the higher center level. So the theories behind pain modulation. This is also a very important and can be separately as a short note. Theories behind the pain modulation. Both the gate control theory and the central pain suppression mechanism is important. Okay, understand this. Um, so this is very important. This is because brain has its own capability to suppress pain signals. So not all time you will be getting the maximum intensity of pain, because the brain itself will be taking active process to suppress the pain signal. So this is a theory behind the gate control theory and the central pain suppression mechanism. So moving on to the first theory called the gate control theory. So this was postulated by Melzack and Wall. So these were the two scientists who invented this gate control theory. Okay, so this gate control theory deals with the combination of A beta fibers, A delta fiber, C fiber, and substantial keratinocyte cells. So SG cells are inhibitory cells. You must know that these are inhibitory cells. Substantial keratinocyte cells are inhibitory cells. A beta fibers carry tactile localization. Okay, so they carry tactile sensation. Okay, so there's a sensation of touch, tactile. So A beta fibers are large fibers which carry tactile sensation, whereas A delta carry a fast pain and C fibers carry slow pain. Okay, so what is this gate control theory? So we already know that the large A beta fibers carry tactile sensations, right? Tactile sensations. So these large A beta fibers stimulate the inhibitory SG cells present in the dorsal horn. These are present in the lamina 2 and 3 mostly. Okay, so this inhibitory SG cells are present in lamina 2 and 3. So when A beta fibers are stimulated, so when the A beta cells, when there is a tactile stimulation taking place, they in turn stimulate the inhibitory SG cells that are present in the dorsal root horn. So these SG cells secrete enkephalin. Okay, so these SG cells keep on secreting enkephalin, which act presynaptically and decrease the synthesis and secretion of the glutamate and substance P. So you understand that only if there is presence of glutamate and substance P, the pain pathways will be conducted. So whenever there is stimulation of tactile sensation, this in turn stimulate the inhibitory SG cells present at dorsal root, and these in turn secrete enkephalin. So enkephalin is a opioid, is a form of opiate. Okay, so enkephalins act presynaptically. That is, so consider this as this to be the nociceptor, and this is the and here is the dorsal. This is the dorsal root and the lamina 2 and 3. Here will be the SG cells. So when this SG cell stimulate, they will be presynaptically secreting enkephalins, which block the secretion and formation of glutamate and substance P. Hence, the pain transmission will be blocked here due to absence of the neurotransmitters required for transmission of pain. So in this figure, you can appreciate the gate control theory very well. So these are the large A beta fibers. So when there is tactile sensation given, in the absence of tactile, so this is the normal case. Okay, normal case. So in the absence of tactile sensation, this A beta fibers are not stimulated. Hence, the enkephalins are not secreted by the inhibitory. So this is the inhibitory SG cells, inhibitory cells of substantia glandinosa. So enkephalins are not secreted presynaptically. Hence, glutamate and substance P are secreted by the pain fibers, that is A delta and C fibers, and hence the gate is open and there is transmission of pain impulses. So consider another scenario where you are giving a tactile pressure, that is you are applying touch. So this touch, what does it do? When the A beta fibers are stimulated, it in turn stimulates the inhibitory cells of inhibitory cells of SG, and this in turn secrete the enkephalin presynaptically, which block the secretion and formation of substance P and the glutamate, thereby blocking the pathway and closing the gate. So the transmission of pain does not take place. So this is the important concept you must understand regarding the gate control theory. So I'm sure that you are thorough with gate control theory. So moving on to the next topic called the central pain inhibition pathway. Okay, so central pain inhibition is nothing but mesencephalic pain inhibitory pathway. That is the higher centers are involved here. So central pain inhibition is nothing but mesencephalic pain inhibitory pathway. The mesencephalic part of the brain is involved here. So what does this do? So this central inhibitory pathway is made possible at three levels. At the first level is the periaqueductal gray matter and the periventricular area of the brain. So the first level is the periaqueductal gray matter and the periventricular area. So second point here is the nucleus magnus. That is this is the nucleus raphe magnus. This is the second point at which the pain can be modulated. There are three areas where the pain can be modulated: the periaqueductal gray and the periventricular area is the first point. Second point is the nucleus raphe magnus, and the third point is the pain inhibitory complex present in the dorsal horn. So consider this to be the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn. Okay, so this is the third point. So first point being periaqueductal gray matter, second point being the nucleus raphe magnus, and the third point being the pain inhibitory complex in dorsal horn. So also there can be influence of the higher centers like the periventricular nuclei in the hypothalamus. Okay, so this can also, but this does not have direct effect. In turn, this periventricular nuclei in the hypothalamus stimulates the periaqueductal gray matter or the periventricular area, which in turn does the stimulation. Okay, so the periaqueductal gray matter can also be stimulated by the higher centers. You must remember the periventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus is the higher center, which can also stimulate this pain suppression mechanism. So how does this take place? So you can understand this well if you see this flow chart. Okay, so this is nothing but periaqueductal gray matter secrete the enkephalins at the, so the neuronal connection starts from the periaqueductal gray matter. So the neuronal connection starts from the periaqueductal gray matter and first neuronal connection originate from the periaqueductal gray matter and terminate in the nucleus raphe magnus. Okay, so this is the first connection. So the nerve endings of this periaqueductal gray matter secrete enkephalins. The enkephalins are also enkephalins are inhibitors, right? So these enkephalins stimulate the nucleus raphe magnus. So this nucleus raphe magnus, so neuronal connection originating from the nucleus raphe magnus terminates in the lamina 2 and 3, which is also called the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn. So at the nerve endings, these nerve secretes serotonin. So what does this serotonin do is that this serotonin activate this pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn and force them to secrete enkephalins. So this enkephalins help in the further suppression of conduction pathways. We already know that enkephalins are used in suppression of the conduction pathway. That is, it terminates the progression of the pain pathway. So summarizing this periaqueductal gray matter can receive stimulus from the higher centers like cerebral cortex, limbic system, and the periventricular nucleus of the hypothalamus. Okay, so from here they can stimulate the periaqueductal gray matter. So the neurons from the periaqueductal gray matter at their nerve endings are the raphe magnus nucleus. That is, this is the second point of this pain inhibitory tract. The first point being the periaqueductal gray matter, second point being the raphe nucleus, and third point being the pain inhibitory complex and dorsal horn. So these points are the connections of the pain suppression mechanism or the pain suppression pathway or the analgesia system. So they can ask the question in different ways. If they ask explain the analgesia mechanism of pain, the answer is the same. Okay, So the nerve endings of the neurons originating from the periapital gray matter secrete enkephalins near the raphe nucleus. So in turn, the raphe nucleus is stimulated. So from the raphe nucleus, the next neurons originate and they terminate in the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn, that is in the lamina 2 and 3. Lamina 2 and 3, where they secrete the serotonin. So this serotonin, this serotonin stimulates this pain inhibitory complex of dorsal horn, which force them to secrete the enkephalins, and hence suppression or blockage of pain occurs. Okay, so this is what will be explained in this figure also. So from the periapital gray matter, the enkephalinic neurons secrete the enkephalins in the raphe magnus nucleus, and from here in turn the next neurons originate and they terminate in the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn, where they secrete this. These are serotonin neurons which secrete serotonin at the nerve endings in this lamina, which in turn force that complex to secrete the enkephalins, which act both presynaptically and postsynaptically and put an end to the transmission of pain. So this two are important regarding the pain inhibition is concerned. That is a modulation of pain inhibition is concerned. I'm sure you are thorough with this topic also. So this is also an important topic. Okay, so moving on to the visceral pain. So visceral pain, which is completely different from that of somatic pain. So visceral pain is nothing but it is a pain arising from the visceral organs, that is our internal organs. So pain arising from the visceral pains is called visceral pain. So not like that. It is not like somatic pain in a way that this visceral pain is carried by trigeminal nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, and autonomic nervous system. So the visceral pain from the scalp and face are carried by the trigeminal nerve, and that from the soft palate, oral cavity, and the area of mouth is carried by the glossopharyngeal nerve, and the internal organs of the abdominal cavity and thorax are carried by the autonomic nervous system, mainly the sympathetic branches of the ANS. So visceral pain is not important, but for completion sake, we'll be taking visceral pain. Okay, so visceral pain can be carried by many nerve connections, which may include trigeminal nerve, which carries this visceral pain sensation from the scalp, head, and face. The glossopharyngeal nerve carries the pain sensation from the oral cavity, palate, and tongue, and pain from thoracic structures and abdominal structures are carried by the ANS, mainly the sympathetic fibers. So similar to that of the somatic pain, visceral pain is also caused by distension of viscous, ischemia, and spasmic contraction. Okay, so only if you know these points regarding visceral pain, it is sufficient. Okay, so visceral pain is caused due to distension of viscous, ischemia, and spastic contraction, which is similar to that of the somatic pain. So moving on to a topic called treatment of pain. So this in more detail you will be learning in pharmacology. So for completion sake, what is the treatment of pain? There are many treatment of pain, and the most important or few treatments of pain include you can give drugs like analgesics, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and sedatives for immediate relief of pain. Analgesics, NSAIDs, and sedatives. So you can also give a nerve block which prevents the conduction of pain pathway from the lower centers to the higher centers, and also surgical procedures like cordotomy, in which the nerves in the spinothalamic tract or the spinothalamic tract are cut. Okay, so in this way, if you do cordotomy, you will be out of pain sensation for nearly 6 to 8 months or even some years too. Okay, so these are some treatments of pain, like drugs like analgesics and NSAIDs can be given for immediate relief of pain. Nerve block, which is done during anesthesia, and also surgical procedures like cordotomy. Okay, so next moving on to referred pain. Referred pain is nothing but it is the irritation of viscous frequently produces pain, which is not felt in that place, but in a somatic structure present at a considerable distance away from the affected structure. So if originally pain is arising from your internal organ, so the pain will not be felt there. It will be present at a somatic structure which is present at a considerable distance from it. So this is called referred pain. That is, the pain from one place is referred to another place. Okay. So characteristic of referred pain are it follows the dermatomal role of experience, and role of consciousness. So what is role of consciousness? So normally we are aware of the front part of the body rather than the back part of the body. Isn't it true, right? So whenever there's pain, pain is referred to the anterior part of the body because we are more conscious about the anterior part rather than the posterior part. This is nothing but the role of consciousness. What does role of experience play? So normally the pain arising from the abdominal cavity will be referred to the midline of the abdomen or the umbilical region. This is a general rule. But if you already if you have undergone a surgery and if there is a scar present over any part of the abdomen, the pain will be referred to that place because of experience. So you already have a pain, and you already had a pain sensation in that scar, right? So this explains the role of experience. So pain from the internal structures will be referred to the position of experience rather than the normal position. So dermatomal role. So you'll all be aware of what a dermatome is, right? So dermatome is nothing but it is an area of skin which is supplied by the same spinal nerve. Okay, so this is what is called dermatome. So dermatomal role is nothing but it refers when it's always felt or a structure that is developed from the same embryonic segment or dermatome in which the organ which is the source of the pain developed. So this phenomenon is referred to as dermatomal role. Okay. So there are a few mechanisms of referred pain which will be discussed. There are two basic mechanisms, that is the facilitation principle and the convergence principle. So what does facilitation convergence principle mean? So first we'll be discussing about the convergence principle. So convergence principle is true for severe pain. That is, whether it may be a somatic pain or a visceral pain. Okay, this from the second order neurons, the connections for both is same. So you must be you must know that only the first order neuronic connections are different for somatic pain and visceral pain, but the connections from the second order neurons is same for the somatic pain and the visceral pain. So when so if there is any visceral pain, if you are stimulating any visceral pain, this can be misinterpreted to be a somatic structure, and the somatic structure, so the pain from visceral pain, the visceral organ can be referred to the somatic structure. So this is called the convergence principle. That is, both the pathways converge at the second order neuron. So this is called the convergence principle. So whether it is from the visceral organ, the pain from the visceral organ somatic structure, the pain can be misinterpreted to be from the somatic structure, and the pain is referred to the somatic structure. So this is regarding the referred pain of the convergence principle of referred pain. So next, moving on to the facilitation principle. So what does facilitation principle mean? So normally visceral pain, what does it do is it decreases the threshold at the second order neurons. So normally when there is a pain in the somatic structure, if it is a mild pain, it is not taken on till it is not carried till your brain. It is perceived in the spinal cord itself, and it vanishes in the spinal cord. It is not taken to the higher centers. But when you see about the visceral pain, since it is decreasing the threshold at this second order neuron, even if it is a mild intensity of visceral pain, it will be carried till the entire part of the that is to the entire tract of pain. So this pain can also be misinterpreted to be a somatic structure, and it is referred to the somatic structure. So this is regarding the facilitation principle and the convergence principle of referred pain. Okay. So now moving on to radiating pain. So unlike referred pain, the pain is so in radiating pain, the visceral pain is experienced both locally and also a distant point. Unlike the referred pain, where the pain is only felt in the new area other than the original area, but in radiating pain, the pain is felt both in the actual area and also a distant area. This is called the radiating pain. So in case of appendicitis, the pain is normally in the right iliac fossa. So from the right iliac fossa, the pain is radiated to the center of abdomen, that is the umbilical region. So pain from the right iliac fossa is radiated to the center of abdomen. So this, in case of appendicitis, so this is called radiating pain. That is, pain is felt both locally and at a distant point. That is the original place of the injury and the distant point also. So this is regarding the referred pain and radiating pain. So moving on to the last slide called the applied physio. So few basic applied physiology. So what is hyperalgesia? Hyperalgesia is hypersensitivity, that is increase in pain sensitivity is called hyperalgesia. Okay. So moving on to herpes zoster. So it is an infection. It's also called as shingles. Herpes zoster is also called as shingles. Okay, which is caused by herpes. Uh, Herpes zoster is a disease which is caused by the herpes virus, which will be detailed studying in your second year in your microbiology. So just remember the name herpes zoster as applied physiology for pain. Okay, so this is something in which this herpes virus infects the dorsal root ganglion and cause pain. So these are the few applied physiology. There are more applied physiology called Brown-Sequard syndrome and phantom limb, which will be taken along the lecture taken in thalamus. Okay, when they're taking thalamus, they'll be explaining in detail about the Brown-Sequard syndrome and phantom limb, which is separately a short note for you. Okay, so few applied physiology, summarizing applied physiology. What is hyperalgesia? So increased sensitivity of pain perception is called hyperalgesia. So herpes zoster is a condition is also called as shingles, where skin eruption takes place uh, due to herpes virus infection, which infects the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, so this will be the end of this lecture. So if you have any doubt, or if you come upon something which you cannot understand, or anything, or at any point in pain if you're not understanding, just drop it in the comment box and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I'm insisting this much time because pain is so important throughout your entire career. So make sure that you study of pain today itself. Okay, and yeah, if you have any doubt, please drop it in the box and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.